I need somewhere to put all these K-cups. I got this project from a guy named Colin Connect, and his channel is called Woodweb. His YouTube channel is called Woodwork Web. I have a leftover piece of cedar fence picket, and it is 5 inches wide, which works out really well because I need 6 strips of wood that are 2.5 inches wide. And so all I need to do is split this right down the middle. This is a cool trick to find the center point of a board. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a carpenter square and you're gonna get it flush with one edge, and then you're gonna draw a line on the 45-degree side of the square. Then you just flip it over, do the same thing. I want it flush with this edge and flush with this edge. And I'm going to draw another line. And the middle of these two lines here where they intersect is going to be the exact center line of my board.
My belly is fat. I just realized that watching this video. That's because I like food and I'm lazy. That's a bad combo.
The next thing I need to do after I've ripped my 2.5 2 is cut 6 pieces at 1 foot 2 inches. So what I've done is I measured 1 foot 2 inches on the board, and then I set up a stop block so that they'd all be the exact same size. So I've cut and sanded 6 1 foot 2 by 2.5 pieces of wood, and I also did 12 1/2-inch strips by 1 foot 3. These I'm gonna frame this board with these guys. This was a slightly darker piece of the cedar fence picket that I had. So I'm going to use this as a frame, and hopefully the joint will be tight enough that I can just leave it natural, put just a clear coat on it. You'll notice I cut these an inch longer than I cut this one. The reason for that is so that I can have some overhang on either side. So I've got a 1/2 inch of overhang. And that way what I'll do is I'll just trim the ends with my miter saw so they're all nice and flush. So the next thing I want to do is glue these strips onto the sides. So what I'm going to do is move these pieces around a little bit so that I get good contact with the glue on the surface. And then I'm going to take a piece of tape and pull it nice and tight around the other side. I'm going to do one on the other side. Just like that, and I'll go all the way down it. So, and the purpose of the tape is so I can do all 6 of these at the same time without having to own, 24 sets of clamps, right? I probably didn't necessarily do the math in my head for that. That was stupid and a waste of time, but you get the idea. So I'm going to use tape, and I can do all 6 of them at the same time. I gave my cat Little Bear some cat treats this morning, and he decided he was going to swat it around instead of eating it. Well, he ate it eventually, but he decided he was going to swat it around for an hour before he ate it. He's such a weirdo. but that's one of the reasons I love them. I love weird cats and also weird people. So I have all my pieces cut, glued and cut and trimmed. Now what I gotta do is I gotta measure out for my, where I want my K-cups to go. So I'm gonna do 5 each side. I'm gonna do 6-sided column. And so that will enable me to hold 30 of these. And so what I did is I just kind of did a rough measure of where I wanted them. And it ended up working out so that I wanted my top one at 2 inches. So what I did is I got the center line of this board, and I laid a combination square along here, and I'm going to mark my first one, the center line of the pod, to be at 2 inches, and then the rest of them at 2.5 inches. So that's going to be 2. Next one will be at 4.5. Next one will be at 7 inches. Then 9.5. And then finally my last one's going to be 12. I don't have a drill press, so I'm going to have to use a Forstner bit and a handheld drill. So I have to be really careful about making sure the drill doesn't jump. So one of the steps I took for each board is I'm going to just take a nail on that center line and give it a little tap, so then the drill will have a place to grab onto and start. But I'm only going to make you watch me do one, because that would be extremely boring to make you watch me do all 6 of these boards. Another thing that I recommend is that you mark both sides where the top is. Okay, so I put a little T on the back side because you're not going to see that, and then on the good side I put a piece of tape so I don't have to have a pencil mark there. And I recommend doing this because I can't tell you how many times I've drilled something in the wrong place, and if you drill it in the wrong place and they end up like that, you're going to be out of alignment. So now I'm ready to start drilling. I've got my boards clamped tightly to my work surface, and I have a piece of plywood under it that'll prevent tear out. And I would go ahead and take a piece of scrap wood and just do a practice run at this so you get a feel for how the bit's gonna work. I'm going to go ahead and put my point in one of the holes I made. Okay, hold it straight down, push down relatively hard, and just give it a couple of and boy, this does make a mess. I'm just gonna warn you. Look at all that sawdust chips, whatever the hell you wanna call it, everywhere. So, but it's okay. I have a broom. So I'm gonna go ahead and do all these boards. It's 30 holes I have to drill. So you can see that 5/8 bit works really well. Puts it about halfway through. Here's another little trick I picked up along the way. You can take a hole saw bit and put it on your drill and use carpet tape, and it's double-sided, and you just tape a piece of sandpaper around it, and then you use your drill and you can sand holes. So I used that to sand the holes for my K-cup pods, and it worked really well. For a 6-sided figure or a hexagon, I need 120-degree angles. So I need to rip each of these sides of these strips to 60 degrees, and the two, adjoining sides will add up to 120. And this is where it's helpful to have an angle finder. I used a angle finder to set the bevel on my table saw to exactly 120 degrees, which means the opposite side will be 60 degrees. If you've never heard of Alan Watts as in like wattage of a light bulb or something, I highly recommend you look him up. It can be life-changing for you. He might not make sense to you, but for me it was life-changing. If you're someone who has suffered from depression or anxiety in the past, listening to his talks just give you a whole new perspective on the world. So check him out, Alan Watts. His son Mark Watts has a podcast called Being in the Way. It's by Mark Watts, Alan Watts' son. Alan Watts passed away in 1973, and he's definitely been one of my strongest influences in my life. And again, he really kind of helps you to put everything into perspective. So I highly recommend you look him up and look up his podcast and give it a listen. And if it doesn't make sense to you, then you don't have to listen to it again. To glue this up, I put a strip of tape at the top and bottom of each seam. And I used duct tape. I started with this painter's tape and it didn't stick good enough, so I used duct tape. And so I ran one at the top and the bottom of each seam, and then I did one at the bottom across the top, and then the middle all across like that. And now all I have to do is flip this. And I'm just gonna put glue in all these seams and then pull it together with the tape. Okay, so now you can see I've got my column all set, and I'm gonna let that dry over the night. And you look in the middle of this, you can see
It's a perfect hexagon. It's a perfect hexagon. It's a perfect hexagon. It's a perfect hexagon.
So I just sanded it, took the tape off, and put a clear coat of lacquer finish on it. And it looks really good. I'm quite happy with how it looks so far. Now the next thing I need to do is make the base and the top for it. I'm gonna use my router because it has a circle cutting jig on it. So there's a little piece under here that you nail to the board, and then this wing nut goes on here and it enables the router to spin around and stay on that pivot point. So it cuts a perfect circle. So this is my first time trying this function on this, and
We'll see how it turns out.
all this cut a perfect circle, and I was really surprised at how easy it was. It was very, very easy, very smooth. The hardest part was just keeping the cord out of the way. But yeah, I'm very pleased with the way this cut a circle. There's only one problem. I cut the damn thing too small. Maybe I can make a spare tire out of it or something. I'm sure Bob Vila is rolling in his grave right now after seeing that.
The reason that I cut my circle too small is because I was measuring from the blade to the wing nut. Okay, so I wanted well, I'm not going to get into the geometry or the math of it too much, but basically, I should have been measuring to the nail, because the nail is the actual pivot point, not the wing nut.
So I made my top a little bit smaller than my base, and I have them cut out and sanded. I'm gonna leave those plywood edges. I know there's like some burn marks and stuff on there, and a lot of people will do like a laminated edge, or I was even thinking about painting them, but you know what, I'm gonna just leave this one natural and not mess with it, because I think it will look really nice that way. So what I did to avoid having to deal with squeeze out for the glue is I took a piece of scrap wood and I cut out pieces to fit in the top and the bottom. So I'm going to glue those to the sides, and then I'm going to use this to glue my top on, so all the squeeze out will be in this area, so then I won't have to worry about glue. I put some little felt discs on the bottom of it. That way it wouldn't scratch my countertop, and also it would make it easy to just spin around, so they kind of slide when you spin it around. So this is what it looks like finished. I'm really happy with the way it came out, and this was a really fun and easy project. I'll probably make more and give them to my neighbors.
Thanks.